talk to your data clear and bright.
140 people have signed up for this webinar. Based on experience, about 30% are probably showing up, and the rest is waiting for the recording. So I expect a few more people. And before I start with the official presentation, let me just introduce myself to you who have not been attended a webinar like Oscar. But I also, and maybe that's also why it comes again and again, I evolve continuously, and also here for this presentation, well, it's also a new topic I haven't presented in that way before, but I am constantly experimenting and trying out things and moving forward as we have to, because also LLMs are moving forward and developing, and there's always new opportunities and possibilities that actually come along. And we also see one that I recently also figured out that I will tell you in the presentation. So how did I came to do what I do? I am in qualitative research, and especially also digital supported by digital tools since 1992. So since a long time already. It started in the 1980s, where people developed software tools to help us support us with qualitative data analysis, because manually it is a lot of work, and digital tools help. And still today, also if I talk to people, some have never kind of made that step towards digitizing it. They still kind of work with post-it notes, and then of course now we have the jump with AI technology. So I've been, that's kind of the red line. I've always been working in that field in kind of different jobs, but also advised and consulted and been part of many research projects and learned along the way. And then AI technology came around, and when I started to experiment with that, I kind of said whatever we had to do in the last 30, 40, 50 years, we can do that differently now. And that's why I came up with that slogan, stop coding, meaning tagging data and start talking. And as I said, you live and learn. The LLMs develop. So in part, I have to revise that slogan, but we will get to that. But I still prefer talking rather than tagging and coding data. But there's so many different approaches where, sometimes it might be useful. And that in terms of introduction, and maybe the last sentence here is then why I came to develop Q Insights with my co-founder. He's the technical part, I'm the domain expert part. That I was experimenting with the tools that were out there, and it was early versions of those tools. They also have developed further, and I experimented with those and developed a vision how I would realize and how I would do it, how I would implement LLMs. But if you're not part of your own tool, you never, you cannot so much influence the direction. That's why I said, if I want to see my vision to become true, then I have to start building my own tool. And with a bit of a longer journey, didn't start out with Q Insights, but it's what it is with startup life, that now we have actually Q Insights. And to also be part of that presentation, I've all along said automation is not the solution. And apparently the industry is waking up right now. So, it's always a bit nice if you can say, well, I told you so. But so that's something I also incorporate in the presentation. And so maybe you can also see it yourself when I present it, especially the reasoning behind it. So let's get going with that presentation. You are free to, use the chat. I've seen at least there's 2 comments. You can, there's all the note takers that also take part in the chat. But introduce yourself also in the chat. I can read then afterwards, and also you here in the group then can see where are these people coming from. Are they academics? Are they coming from industry? What type of research you are doing. So you can also write that in the chat. And also, if you have a question alongside, please write that in the chat. I will now go start with the presentation, and we look at questions afterwards. And to tell you a few words how I prepared that presentation. Those who have seen it a couple of times might recognize it immediately. It's AI generated. And that's also a bit, also in part of proving the point, it is AI generated, but I did also some adjustments there. Funnily enough, if you have an AI, it knows, well, it knows it has, everything, all the information it needs to prepare a proper presentation, but it always comes up with 0.12 and 0.8.5. Nothing you can read. So I did increase some of the text here. So, but this is also kind of to show implicit, what do you get with automation and what you get with the interaction. So I used OpenAI for this. And because I tried different things. So I produced a text with everything I wanted to say. So there's actually a whole, written part. Well, produced that together with AI, and I also did that with GPT because that has most of my memory. And we will talk about context as well, how important that is. I just tell you how far it goes back. I just mentioned about that slogan: "Stop coding, start talking." That was a presentation I did in December 2023, and I recently had some conversation. And topic doesn't matter, but it does then came up with this. And what you said, 2 years ago, or it's even longer, and so it came up with that slogan. So it does have those things in memory, and most of the things I talk about is AI and qualitative research. So I built on that memory in order to build now the essence for this presentation. I couldn't have done that using any other large language model, which wouldn't have that same context. So you see by now what I wrote here, that I use it for all kinds of purposes, use it all the time. I have tons of chats, and I'm not only using GPT, I also use Gemini and Claude for different purposes, but they don't have that much memory. I know I can transfer it, probably will at some point, because it's really valuable if they can access that memory. And there's a point here, and because that also, of course, has to do with your qualitative research as well. So you can use it for research, design, analytic thinking, writing up purposes, and you probably have done a lot of these things by now, or a number of you have done that. And you can also write little routines here. These are GPTs I wrote, and also one I actually also made available as Gem in Gemini. So these are those workflows. If you have routine workflows, you always have a particular way of creating an interview guide, so you don't have to start prompting that all the time. So you describe that workflow. It does require a paid subscription, but you can use these things without a paid subscription. And of course, these days also agent workflows. I have to say I prefer if I work with a tool where it's kind of agentic in the background, and that I don't have to deal with GitHub and Python and all of that. Even though people tell me it's so easy, but it's always, if you say that with a technical mindset, it's very different. But so these are like very simple workflows, no agentic workflows yet. But these are things you can do for particular part of your research process. And in the nature of experimenting, I said I need to try this Claude desktop thing. Also, the OpenAI also has a desktop thing, and also everybody's raving about Sonnet 4.8. So I needed to write something like a literature review, but made more meta review for a book chapter I'm writing. You see here on hybrid intelligence, and then. I have 110 articles collected over the last 3 years. So it started with 2 articles in 23. So that field was really evolving. And of course, I was part of it. So every article that came out, I put into my little library and read it. So I was very familiar with the literature review. But this is the screenshot from a LinkedIn post. that I think is my most viral post I ever posted. So I think it's by 25,000 impressions. I know others have many, many more, but this is kind of high for me. So after, I posted in the evening, and the next morning it had 8,000 impressions and 28 comments already, and by now over 70. So these things do resonate. If we will try out things with LLMs and how it works and new possibilities there are, because with Claude Sonnet or with the desktop application, it's not, you don't have to upload 110 documents. Yeah, it can really access stuff on your computer, and that's where we are at context again. Yeah, because now I provide the context that I have locally on my computer, and then it can do so much better than just using a general chatbot. But we still here a general purpose tool for all kinds of things that support our research. So as I said, this presentation is also about how far can we go with general purpose tools that are available to us. And here I have to say, this for me is kind of also one-time thing, more or less, and there is Licit, for instance, for literature review, and for if you do that more academic and need to do that for different purposes and more often. So there are also special purpose tools for this. That was experimental, and it wasn't, also as with everything else, I guess we know this wasn't the final version. So again, I had to start iterating and working in conversation again to get where I wanted to go. But I was the first good draft. So this is where I come to that. I said, well, I have to a little bit revise my saying, stop coding, start talking. We are, well, I'm with David Morgan, I'm editing a book for AI and qualitative research. And the book chapters were written last year, and now we're in the final process of editing. And we have written something about using ChatGPT for coding open ends, because a lot of people do that, and there's a lot of text written also use ChatGPT for this and that and this. And yes, it's oftentimes ChatGPT, even though there are all these other LLMs by now as well. But a lot of what you read is ChatGPT. And I said, well, let's try again what the new models are capable of. I did 2 courses on that chapter. We wrote that in August of last year. And there's all kinds of troubles. I couldn't even upload the Excel file, and I had to copy and paste and run into context window troubles. It wasn't coding properly, and then I tried it again. Gemini wasn't still very good, but Claude and OpenAI, I used the 4.6 model for this and GPT 5.5. I could just upload the data, and you see the data is like, it's synthetic data actually. So I produced something here, very short answers to 2 questions, and then you also see that we get the same coding. I think this here, so we get some other subcode here, but it's very similar. So I also did some comparisons. So Claude and GPT were similar to Gemini, not so much in their coding. So coding very structured data, it was 150 cases, so not 1,000 or something. So also to say that I tested it with the 2 questions, so 300 responses, so to speak, and they could produce these outcomes. And as compared to last year, August, that was in no way possible. But you still also have to, there's also something to say. You cannot just ask, build me a coding frame, because then, you get a coding frame, but there you have to, put your methodological knowledge into place. And if you starting out and you're a young researcher, of course, it then becomes difficult, because you don't see whether a code is too broad or is overlapping 2 concepts. And LLMs like to do that, put 2 things together that don't belong together, or often have in the code like a reason and an outcome together. And when we code, then you do code all these different aspects. when I developed the prompt, and I was using that prompt also with the newer models, it's not the point that you read this all. It's just to give you an idea. It's not just about, oh, develop a coding frame for this. Yeah. So I provided context, but then I also provided guidelines that how a code needs to behave. You see homogeneity, heterogeneity, and so on. So it's lots of detailed instruction, and that is something I developed throughout. I developed the first coding system, looked at it, looked at what was wrong, and then adapted the instruction because I could see where the LLM got it wrong, and said, oh, this is where I need to put in some more instructions. So you see also here, yeah, the one shot thing, you do something and you get an output, will get you somewhere, but not the quality you actually need. And then with that kind of quality framework, it could actually produce reasonable, good outcome here. Still, the question is, how consistent is the coding across all 150? Probably can still manage, but if it's 400, how consistent is the coding, and how much do you want to actually rely on that? So that part on where I said, yeah, we're getting into that place when we have, very very pre-segmented structured data. LLMs might be able to help us coding those data. I wouldn't try that for interview data. So that brings us to, how does a chatbot actually read data? And if you give it an Excel table, yes, it's clear analysis unit, so it's all a given. So you provide that, you prepare your data in that sense very well. With interview data, it's a different story. So we upload the transcripts, and let's assume it's all, data security of taken that into account. Let's assume we have a data set where we can do that. But then what happens, what an LLM does with those data, you don't know. Or not an LLM, but the chatbot does. And it generates some answers. So it can chunk segments, it might index it, it might saying, oh, that's a lot of data, so I start summarizing and compressing. So you have no idea. And it also, see whether that is, no, it's not on this slide. It also happens if you upload documents and then you chat with those documents over a longer time, and there is still context window limit, so it's not that if that chat gets longer and longer, the LLM or the chatbot needs to make room. And you upload your data here, but then it starts then not forgetting but starting then needing to compress and summarize what's in the documents. And then that's where people start complaining. Oh, it's all hallucinating. It's not working. I can't work with it. And that's why you don't use no Copilot, no any chatbot for that kind of stuff, because this is what's happening. Hallucinating always means that's the point number 4 here, is filling the gaps. So you think you have given it the data, but you have no idea what it's actually doing with it. And if it has indexed it or starting to not being able to keep all that information, and you ask a question, we know they always want to give us an answer. They always want to give, be friendly. Then they kind of start making up something based on the context, that based on their training data, something that fits your question, but there are not really quotes from your data. Other things that are more subtle is that they're smoothing over differences, and I think some of you that work with LLMs, they know that is kind of the tendency towards the middle and leaving out, things on the fringes, unless you start prompting it, and that's where the interaction part becomes important again. That if you automate, you get smoothed, filling gaps kind of analysis out of that, or fragments blending from different type of interviews together. Or what it also likes to do is sometimes there's very thin evidence, and it's just completely blowing it up into like a conclusion that is never really good well founded in the data. It might be just 2 sentences, and it just blows it up a lot. So these are tendencies of LLMs. Or general chatbots, and that's what we experience when we produce output, and that is for some people then a reason to say we cannot work with that technology. And well, the question is it the technology or is it the environment you work in? Because the technology is not necessarily chatbots, because you can do a lot more with the technology. And that brings me to RAG, and this is retrieval augmented generation. This is where all apps that are purpose-built that work with text have implemented a system like that. And the way that works, that before any data is sent to an LLM to produce an answer, is that the system first looks in your data sources. Where do we find information about whatever question you have been asking? And then only that bit of that information is sent to the LLM for processing. So a lot of noise is already filtered out. That's why you, in that process of the quality of the answer also increases and you reduce hallucination. It's not that it's completely gone, but there is a much lower risk of the LLM making something up because you keep it grounded in your data, but you still need to be there and evaluate the output. That brings me to NotebookLM, because as also some people in this audience say, well, yes, we use NotebookLM, it costs us €20 per month, and that's kind of all what we need. You know, it's grounding the analysis and yeah, we get some quotes, and that's kind of all what we need. And we will show later, yeah, that that's already, you know, an advantage that it does that, but it still does not replicate like a full analytic workflow. We will see these kind of data that you see here as well. I mean, you see it a bit indicated here. Well, it's Alexander and Trevor and Deborah and Shahitza, some data set I always play around with. It's about the meaning of friendship. And the question here was something about formation of friendship. How do friendships begin? And I will shortly show you some answers that Notebook provides, and we can also look at it as in real time. So what we want to do, we want to first actually describe cases. We need to become more familiar with the data. We want to learn what's in the data, and then we compare and contrast whether that's cases or concepts. That way we work closely with the data, and then we start interpreting patterns. An LLM is trained to retrieve patterns, and it then often just immediately jumps into the last step. We see that wonderfully here, that NotebookLM is doing that. So this is the answer of the question, and yeah, I show you that in a second, and then you also see the question: what was the first impression when they first met their friend? And you immediately get basically themes, yeah. Relief in daunting environments, immediate kinship and shared identity, intrigue and annoyance and misconceptions. And then this is not the same entirely as if you do a theme analysis across the data, because it's focused on that one specific question. And you see also that's what I highlighted in yellow. It immediately interprets that was anxiety driven without actually it keeps us grounded in the data so we can look up the quotes, but it immediately jumps into interpretation. And I slightly changed the prompt. Still the same question, but I said, be analytical about it and compare cases. So I just gave the same question, give a bit different instruction. So what you get, same question, 5 minutes later, now we get shared life stages, specific circumstances, cultural background, mutual understanding. And you also see here what I said before, it's always mixing often two aspects, that analytically we maybe want to first look at cultural background and then at mutual understanding, because that might also have, might occur not with cultural background, but because of shared interests or something, which might relate to cultural background, but we need to figure that out. And then we have mutual support and shared environments. This is what we get as a question, as an answer to the same question, just formulated slightly different. And then, yeah, think about when you have been using NotebookLM, you put that in a report. And your report could have looked in 5 different ways. Could have been this based on the same question, pulled out 5 different kinds of conclusions and yeah, suggestions for strategies and implementations, just because you answered the question a bit differently. The context, you can also give it to NotebookLM. You can put it in the beginning of a prompt, but it is no longer optional. You know, everywhere you listen, and I just recently listened to a presentation from a topic conference that was recently held. Also, it was computer scientists, developers talking about that. And so it's not necessarily related to qualitative research, but everything that we do with LLMs. And what the message of that speech was like, don't fine-tune models. Models change so quickly. So by the time you have fine-tuned the model based on your context and based on your domain, so to speak, the model has changed. Development is so quick, and what is much more important to improve quality is to give the context. And that's the example with the literature review I did. So I could link it to a folder on my computer, and then it could also get the data when it was needed. So what I also had done, I had created subfolders because I knew the data, I knew the literature. I'd already created subfolders by, did my theme analysis basically of the literature myself and gave it clear structure of how I wanted this, like in 3 different parts. So I gave some detailed ways on how I wanted that meta review to be done, so it could selectively also pull the articles and didn't have to pull the 100 or look at 110 at the same time. And this can be done if you work with the context that Claude Desktop or any other desktop versions now provide to you. Coming back to qualitative research, well, your research questions are important. How you commission it, the whole brief, the purpose, like the information about participants, the sampling, your observations. LLMs are not embodied; they're missing lived experience. So this is that experience that we have being in the field, and what our impression was. That's important context information for the LLM. To give us good quality answer, and also the methodology, whether it's simple content analysis or, we have some academics here also in the audience, whether you want to do the ground theory analysis or discourse analysis, whatever. But the important part here is also, we cannot just say do grounded theory. Well, something comes out, but it's not what I would call a good quality, because those who familiar with that approach, there are like 5 different ways of doing it. And even then, the LLM knows about that from the training data, but there's a lot of crap on this also on the internet where it was trained on. So you do need to guide the model also on the approaches. So you cannot just assume it knows how to do this analysis and how to do that analysis. And basically, they are trained to do pattern recognition and pull out themes. So that's what they do naturally. And if we want them to do something different, we need to actually guide them. And while it's from February, this article, but that's the article where I said in the beginning, I said, see, I told you so. It's a presentation called Fast Food Research, the Area of Ultra-Processed Insights, that people are realizing when we get out of all that automation, it's a lot of BS. And these are the costs of actually acceleration. And if you want to get everything done within 5 minutes. So what happens, the first part is, call that epistemic clutter. What it means is actually, depending on how you prompt, we just saw that example, you can go in that direction or that direction. And if you don't even prompt, if you just ask, analyze the data, the LLM or whoever wrote the application, put something in the prompt and you don't even know about this, and you get one answer, one particular way of looking at the data. You ask a different question and you can come out with a completely different decision and conclusion and strategic advice if you were in the insights industry. Analytic noise is really a matter of quality and and maybe bad, even wrong advice that you might be giving. And yeah, the evidence stays at the surface. LLMs don't go that deep if you don't are part of the analysis. And all that knowledge that you have as researcher, the instinct from your industry, all the domain knowledge you have, if you work in the cosmetic industry or if you work in health research, or you have all your different expertise, whether it's in pharma or transportation or whatever. That expertise that you have built that needs to be part of the analysis in order to output trustworthy data, actually. And this is why interaction matters so much. That's why automation it was a nice promise, but apparently, yeah, it's found out now that it's not the ultimate solution yet, and that we have to look for different solution. And this is where now it brings me to Q Insights, where I show you where or how we have implemented some of these aspects that are so important for qualitative research. And before we get into that, just a quick note on data security. We are on European server. All the Q Insights environment where you work is actually double encrypted, so it's not just one. Let's see, what you see on the image is not just one guard around it, but it's double encrypted, and it fulfills all the requirements of different data security laws, and the data is processed in Europe. So you have to think about the application, being in that secure place. And when we do a lot of processing also within the platform, but when the data needs to, or you formulate an answer, then whatever we have prepared before on the platform is sent to an LLM for processing. So the LLMs are too big to all host that in one area, and that LLM also sits in Europe, so that doesn't go outside. And that's relevant, of course, for all Europeans here that are listening. So let me now move into some practical, show you practical how it actually looks like. And this is that friendship example that I showed you before. I provided here some context of what this project is all about. And then I have a long chat, and I have this long chat, and this is just one particular area. I'm looking at friendship formation, and those who work with NotebookLM, they know they can save these notes, and then you have all these different notes with those wonderful titles. Some of this I changed. It was Notebook, I didn't make case summaries. I changed those titles, but these are the, we don't now see the prompt anymore here. But these are what I showed you before, the answer to basically the same question, just slightly differently prompted. And so beyond, and then foundation of human friendship, and we get something that's not wrong. It's also grounded in the data, but we get something very different. Different kind of headlines, different way of interpreting the data from the get-go. So this is how the environment, like you have your data here, you have your source data here, you have your chat where you can also ask two questions. If you have a good answer, you save it as a note. And then, you can all do these other things here, but a note is just one answer to a question. So how have we solved that in Q Insights? So here I need to log in again, but that you kicked out after 30 minutes not doing anything for security reasons. You can also set a multi-factor authentication if you want to even secure your environment more. So this is the dashboard in Q Insights. And when you add a new project, and this is new if you have been looking at the software a bit longer ago, so that was just implemented recently, we actually now require from users to enter context, because it's so important. We had it kind of written on screen, please enter context, but people don't really read what's written on the screen. So now you can write your context here, or you can upload a document as well. So if you have a brief or something, then you can do that as well. I'm just writing here something because otherwise I cannot continue. Like I said, it's a requirement now to create a project. So now I'm actually moving directly into a project that already exists. That meaning of friendship, it's 4 interviews. So the product context then sits here. You can always rewrite it or add it or do something else here. It's also, if you upload a document, we just write it out then here, so you have the context here. And it's not the data to be analyzed, and that's why it doesn't show up here in the data that you have uploaded. It works as context, and it also doesn't interfere with context window. We index the context so that information is available as context. We don't need the exact wording. The aim is not for you to ask questions about your context data. That's something you provide for the AI assistant. We call it Q. So for Q Insights, your AI assistant is here Q in this context. Then you upload the data. And there are some ways, and I'm not going into the details here, that to prepare your data. So we do recognize the speakers, and you see it here. We kind of require speaker ID and column. Most transcripts look like that already. But if your transcripts don't look like this, you might have to do some cleaning, or especially like for focus group transcription, you have to check those, because even if you use LLMs for transcriptions, picking up every speaker correctly, it's still very difficult. Also, very much depends on the quality of the audio. So what you also see here is not only the project context, but further context that you provide. So when you upload an interview or focus group and the speaker IDs are correct, then you actually ask to identify who is the respondent, who is the moderator, or who you want to exclude. If somebody came in the room and there was a bit of chit chat and you don't want to analyze it. So this is also all something that is, that kind of also from the workflow, what is important for qualitative analysis that we built in this platform, which you never get with a chatbot or Copilot, or also not with NotebookLM, because it's written for a very different purpose, also for writing reports. Also, if you look at the answers, it's much more narrative, much more report-like, and not so analytic, because it's a different purpose. And then once you have your respondents, you can then describe profiles, whether it's age, gender, somebody likes chocolate or not, education, years of professional experience, and you enter the values for your respondents. That data context can be used as filters in your analysis, but also implied in a conversation. Please compare male and female respondents, prepare people who like chocolate or not, or compare people based on educational level and so on. So this context is known as meta information to Q, and you can work with that in your analysis. These are the first step, preparing your project right, so the LM can do its best to work, so to speak. The other thing I want to point out here is, you can also have a long list of chats, but you can also organize them. So it's not just one long chat, if you compare that with NotebookLM. And the purpose why I'm doing it, yes, a lot of people just say, well, why are we different from NotebookLM? And that's here the very important bit, apart from also the analysis quality that is very different. So you can, I sorted these as like belonging to research question 1, just as an example. And you also see that I run theme analysis twice. For those who are not familiar with Q-Insight, this is how a theme analysis looks like, and this is how we reference this context. So you always jump into the context of the original source, and we highlight, and you can always read above and below and stay in the context of the data. And what the LLM highlights is the themes that are the text segments that are most prevalent contributing to the themes. It's not like coding. It's not exhaustively highlighting everything. So you cannot compare it to coding, but it brings you back to the data where you can then look at it and look at the context and see whether this makes sense. Now I want to show you two different things. This is the same question I also asked NotebookLM, well, the whole question sequence. This was done with an older version of so this chat is from February, and we still had an older model here. Now it's the GPT-5 model behind it. But you see, you get an answer close to the text. It tells you what Trevor, Alexander, Deborah, and Chaisa, how did they met their friend, and what was their first describe how they first met. And yeah, so it's not interpreting. It just gives you what's in the data. It kind of retrieves what's in the data, and then you can look up in context where exactly that is in the data. And I rerun the analysis, and that's that one. And this is now the GPT-5 model. It is more elaborate, and it's same prompt NotebookLM and here, and see what you get here. Yeah, you also get these the header here now. That's I think what the newer models does, but it still stays in the data and tells you, he was in Austria and felt like blah blah blah, and that was in history class, and here's some quotes in the data. So it stays. It gives you what's in the data and not immediately starts interpreting. Gives you some idea here, so there is some difference between the level, and the quality of the answer surely is better. It gives you here a cross pattern comparison because it's an analytic tool. It's not meant for summarizing articles, whatever. So the same question, and here I changed the prompt slightly and said, be a bit more, give me more narrative, because that was a bit, just giving me bullet points. So I said, write your answer in the narrative style. I still get more descriptive text than immediately interpretive. Oh, this is anxiety driven, and this is this and that and that. Yeah, so you see the difference. What you have the same data, you have the same prompt, and what you get out. So it's not all the same. It's very different whether you have an analysis tool or whether you have a general purpose tool. So here I want to stop. Karina wrote, Susanne, you're describing so clearly my experience using LLMs to do analysis from unstructured data. I know it's due to the architect of LLMs, not the problem at prompting. Yeah, but what I say about prompting these days is you don't have to be a prompting engineer. It's one-shot prompts and few-shot prompts and chain of sort. It doesn't really matter anymore. It's you learning how to interact with the LLM, and also knowing that the important thing is don't just immediately take an answer as the final answer, but read it and say, I don't know this, I see differently, and push back and give arguments why this is different. The data, and you kind of say, oh, this is if that is that it looks like a weak evidence, go back to the data and do you find it somewhere else? So really get that interaction going. I think that is more what people also still need to train, and also with regard to the different environments. So you work differently within Q Insights, because it's an analytical tool. You will see that you might need to interact and prompt differently than you would need to do that in a chatbot, because the system is different. So in a sense, it's also a bit of like grooving into how best talk with that AI assistant. Marco writes again, use an open source model. No, we don't right now. We experimenting with different things in the background. We use GPT as so there's for the kind of when we send it for producing the answer, there's lots of things going on underneath, and it's all agentic now as well. And you kind of see that now when you run a theme analysis or something else. I can maybe just demonstrate. I show you theme analysis. Let me show you grid analysis. So you also get an impression of the different analysis options that you have. And now I do a new grid friend. That's probably not a good question, but just to point out how it works. Yeah, so now you see agents in the background. Yeah, so it's not like one, you have to think about in different processes now giving, one process is done, giving it to a different agent, different agent doing different things. So that's how you can think about an agentic workflow. It's not like one hard-coded thing programmed into it, but it's different agents doing different things, and that's what also speeds up analysis. So grid analysis gives you an answer directly per person. So you get a very quick overview also for focus group or interviews. This is only for focus group and interviews. And you get some references directly, some direct quotes that support the summary here. And if you have more questions, you can go and ask more in depth about it. So the whole system is built on that you have the possibility of interacting. So of course we cannot control how you use it. You can do quick and dirty. We can do this everywhere. I could also do that with any other tools in the past. You can do auto coding and that's it. Yeah. So, but at least the idea of the infrastructure is that it leads you to push back, to ask more questions, to go into more depth about this. While I'm still here. Yeah, so these are the current analysis options that we offer in the theme analysis conversation. We have seen the guided analysis is the LLM is actually making you some suggestion what kind of questions you ask. You can take them, you can leave them. So it's take the cue is kind of taking you at the hand and walking you through, and it's a workflow I wrote. Maybe get the hang of how this works. So that was the idea, a bit pedagogical, and I know some people do both. They like the guided to get some suggestion from the LLM, but they also do their own conversational analysis. And the sentiment analysis we only do for structured data. Like I said, I want to stay true to not promising wrong things, because with sentiment analysis we have these the structured data. We have a cell in an Excel file. The analysis unit is given, and then we can count. And if you have interview data, so what's the analysis unit? Yeah, so if it gives you counts, then that was exactly the wrong project I picked, but I can just run it live. You can see also you can pick the questions where you want to run the analysis from, and here you can define your dimensions. So it doesn't need to be positive, negative emotions, negative, neutral, positive. It can be emotional or rational, or whatever, excited, disappointed, things like that. So every dimension can also be more than two that are important for your research. We did that also with social media comments, and then we introduced hate speech. So we had there, it makes sense, positive, neutral, and negative, but negative was not good enough. So we also used hate speech. And then it could pick up on, make that distinction as well. So here we do count, you get, a pie chart, and there you can see also how the LLM has evaluated each of these responses down here. You can also export that to Excel. And also here, I think the interesting part here is, again, now asking questions about this. Really, like, what are the rational, how could you group the rational responses? And here, I do apply a more categorical type of thinking. And here I think also, because we continue to develop this software, of course, now having seen that LLMs are much more capable of also coding open-ends, that I said, that may be an option that we can also introduce in Q Insights as well as a possibility, and then introducing it where it makes sense, a methodological sense. At what point will Q Insight take over the interpretation of data, or do you stick strictly to description? It takes over when I ask it to. So of course, the point is I start descriptive, and then the more I learn about the data, then also I develop ideas, and then it will be interpretive if I ask it to be. Yeah, you can still, like, how would you interpret it this, and then it will do it. Yeah, but it can also be in that you point is you start descriptively, and the more you learn about your data, the more you start seeing in your data, and then you develop maybe ideas yourself. And there's kind of like, I have this idea that this and this might be related. Please check that in the data. Is that supported by the data? Because the LLM can process these 400 or 600 pages you have, much better than you can. And this is the advantage we can now take out of this without prior having to code the data. Yeah, and that is, I'm not doing interpretation together with the LLM, but that's the point, with the LLM, and not just with the first question, having the LLM come out with, a nice final conclusion. Franz asked, what would be your advice for the type of first contact with AI for BA students for research, design, and analysis? Well, so when I teach, yeah, you can write to me and then maybe I can share some of that. I have some exercises where where people actually experience the limits, and I work with playgrounds. This is what I advise when you start. First, letting two people understand what does hallucination mean? So if I prompt this way and this way, telling people about temperature. I haven't mentioned it this presentation, but we cannot set temperature in a chatbot. It's usually quite high, 0.6, 0.7. You cannot influence that. That is a given. Q Insights, right now, you cannot influence it. At some point, we want to give you that settings. A lot of people still don't know about these kind of things, but it's either at 0 or 0.2, depending on the analysis function, so you get more reliable results. So these are things I would start when with BA students, so before they even get into that, so to understand the nature of LLMs. What do you think are the new skills as researchers need to develop? I think I answered that one right now. With all these tools and how they're changing and how we do research. Do we need to start learning about how LLMs work? Yeah, so I do think that. I mean, it's not like we have to learn that months and months, but like say, if you teach, then develop some exercises where people have these aha moments. This is how it works. So then they know that they have to not kind of take the first answer as a result. That the first answer is the first answer, but the best answer comes in through iterations. Melanie asked, is it run locally? I did remember the slide I have that no, it runs in the cloud because the LLMs are still too large. And for smaller tasks, looking, there's a new model by Google, Gemma, that they did some new development. So things are constantly developing where you could things like transcription, you can do that locally, but it's like one task, and analysis is a different question, because, well, do we want to have mediocre analysis? Not really. Yeah, so we want to have a good analysis here. So Melanie, there is a whole you can also write to me and I explain that. We have a data privacy page where we explain that, and also in the documentation how we handle that. So with the currently, in order to get the quality, you need to be in a cloud environment with LLMs. Mike, do you see a way to identify and make explicit the implicit meanings? How do you handle implicit meanings in the analysis? By prompting. Yeah, so this is, I think, July 15th webinar. You can look it up. It's online. You can also link from our website, and it's also on YouTube if you go to our YouTube channel. I have one example. I might have had, I think I have content, so you can jump directly to it, where I show like a grounded theory example, but a guided one, and that is, of course, implicit knowledge. And I play with that sentence, a PhD leaves the sky in your soul. And that sentence from the article, I think it's also with what I'm referring to with the fast food stuff that we get out with automated LLM. It would be wonderfully to go into depth into the analysis. I haven't done that yet, but this is where through iterative asking questions, and of course you need to know some technical ways and methodological ways on how to do that. But this is where you can get implicit knowledge by the way you ask and work with the LLM. And because the LLM will give you surface knowledge, but you can go with the LLM and get at the implicit knowledge. Is Q Insights more suited for inductive or deductive type of analysis? Is Franz. Both, and also abductive. You can start by just asking exploratory questions, or for me, the theme analysis is inductive because it's built on, it just looks at what's in the data, and it's not, well, it depends on what context you provide. Let's put it that way. So when you first write a project description and you start your analysis, I would not put all your, this is a series I want to use, because then it's immediately honing on onto those theories and becomes more deductive. So there's also a way how you handle product context. Yeah, so if you want to have the inductive, just give a description of course, the participants, a research question, of course, that's important, but don't upload a theory paper, because then your themes will look very different, because it will immediately kind of put that as context. So yes, and if you do that, it becomes more deductive. Or also in a conversation, what you can also do, you can, as primary data, so you can upload a paper which has all your theory in it, and you would select that alongside your documents or your interviews and tell in a conversation, this is the background, this is the theories I want to work with, or copy and paste some definitions into the product context. That also works. And then you work deductively, and that is always how you ask questions. And what the example I gave before, if you start then realizing things, oh, now I have done this chat and that chat, and now I start realizing how A and B connects, that's when you move to the abductive thinking, or what it's called abductive thinking. So basically it's developing like small hypotheses in your through analysis, and then testing that with your data. And then based on that, you get new insights and the cycle starts again. You might move back to inductive and so on. That's the more academic discussion, but I think also if you're not an academic, that it's just this way of thinking of you start seeing something in your data, you have an idea how this could lead to certain conclusions, and then you just give that back to the LLM. You said, this is what I saw. That's why I said prompt writing, just type in your thoughts. And we will give you audio as well in the future, so you don't have to type everything. So you can actually just press the button and talk. My ultimate, also idea from the first beginning, we can talk with our data. And then you can just talk your thoughts and then say, now, please, these are my ideas. Check that back with the data. Is this supported by the data, or do you find something else? So that's the kind of interaction, what I'm talking about. It's not so much about your prompt engineering skills. It's a way how you interact. And this brings us already 5 minutes over the time. I thank you very much for being here. Everybody who likes to try out Q Insights, everybody can try for 1 million tokens. That means try it, please, with not, just don't upload like, 15 documents. Try with 3-4 documents. Then you can try out all the functions. If you said that's not enough for you, you rather want to have a pilot study, you don't want to commit immediately to like a 6 months or 12 months license, talk to us. We can also make it available for a pilot study. Then we have to ask a bit of money, because all tokens you say, it's not for free. Where you can find the YouTube, it's also on the website, but I can also share the link quickly. So we have tutorials. We need to update them again, but I think they still give you the idea of how Q Insights works. But there's also a bunch of webinars and a lot of other talks I have been given. So this is the YouTube channel. I also have a podcast. You also find the podcast on YouTube. And this is actually also AI generated. I use NotebookLM for that. So it's based on things I wrote, and then I upload that to NotebookLM and said, do something. Talk about this, dear NotebookLM podcast does. And sometimes I interfere and edit that a little bit. Then I say goodbye and thank you for being here.
Talk to your data clear and bright. Q Insights helps you do it right. safe and steady side by side. Your research partner always on your side.